Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So today we have two cars with us, the Mercedes-Benz E450 and the BMW M340i, and we're going to compare both of them. So stay tuned for some unadulterated automotive content coming your way. Let's try this time with traction control off. Okay, so we need to understand first, this is an AMG line trim, whereas that is an M Performance. So in BMW terms, this is an equivalent to the M Sport trim, and that is something which is competing with the likes of 43 and the 53 AMGs. But we need to understand that both are using 6-cylinder engines, both are 3-liter turbocharged petrols, both are having approximately 380 horsepower, and both are all-wheel drives. Starting off with the BMW M340i. So we are all aware this is the pre-facelift version. After this, BMW has given 2 facelifts to this same generation of the G20 3 Series. So mine is the first G20 pre-facelift version, and it is having a good amount of cerium grey elements, and personally I love the way my M340i looks. At the same time, I genuinely also love how the LCI 1 and the LCI 2 look. So the major change between the LCI 1, 2 and the pre-facelift version are the headlamps. These are now discontinued, but these are the laser lamps and I love them. So largely I would say that BMW has done a great job when it comes to sprinkling all the M Performance, M Sport elements into the M340i. We do have a functional vent here. Personally love the 792M alloy wheels. So coming up slightly behind, again some cerium grey elements out here. There's a small cheeky little M logo. Some logos are missing. In fact, no AMG logo on the exterior of the E450. The rear is absolutely fantastic. When it comes to the Mercedes E450, I would say that there are a good amount of chrome elements. In fact, it's plenty, and something which is absolutely missing on the M340i, no chrome at all. But this is the AMG line version, and there are AMG line rims here. In fact, that is the only place where you will spot the AMG logo on the car, both inside and out. So for people who would want to be discreet about the car they are driving, at the same time would want to maintain a low profile and not want to be showy of their performance car, the Mercedes E450 manages that very well for them. The E450 on the front has a cross-drilled rotor setup, whereas on the M340i you don't get any cross-drilled setup. However, the caliper size looks similar, and speaking of sizes, I would also want to mention that right now it's very particularly popping out that the E450 seems to be pretty under-tired. 225s all around, 225, 55 R18. 55 is a good thick profile, but personally I feel this would also be a rear biased setup, the 4MATIC, and having driven the E450, I personally feel that it is under-tired but rides well. All of that we will cover in the driving aspect. But yes, Nexen tires is something which is again a new supplier. Mercedes is inducting new suppliers. On the G-Wagon we had seen Falcons, Nexens out here. So interesting developments in the German car scene. Okay, so let's try this time with traction control off. This was much better. And I'll tell you, this is a very difficult car to launch. coming from an M340i, for sure. Oh, but the engine is absolutely stonking and refined at the same time. This is the same M256 engine which we had done a review on the CLE53 AMG, if you remember. So that CLE53 AMG engine and this is the same block. So that engine is a derivative of the E450. This is definitely not as quick as the CLE53, but the factory coated time is 4.5 seconds to the 100, and I'll tell you, it's not easy to get that time because there are two reasons for it. Let me first switch the traction control on, back on. Yeah, now it's. So the reasons are that if you try to launch it with the traction control on and the same pumping the brake method, it does its job, the traction control, and cuts down the power and does not allow you to get that 4.5 second time, how much ever hard you try. And when it comes to switching the traction control off and attempting that time to get that 4.5 second figure with the traction control off, the car does lose traction, and even on the best of surface, it is extremely difficult to come close to that 4.5 second mark. Though I've not timed it, but I've seen the light flicker, and that is something which is not very confidence inspiring. In fact, last night I was trying to launch the car. I got a four-wheel drift, four-wheel wheel spin to be specific, not a drift. So that was something which was very unique experience. I slightly blame it to the tires because, as I said during the opening walk around, the car feels under-tired by the looks of it. At the same time, it begs for a broader set of tires, wider set of tires, at least for the rear. And this is something which is turning out to be a slight disadvantage for the E450 during a launch as well. But is that the personality of the E450? Let's look a bit more closer. So refinement is one thing. The power delivery aspect is again another thing. The way M340i delivers power is raw, whereas the E450, it's voluminous as well as silky. Also thanks to the 48 volt mild hybrid system, which is having an ISG that definitely propels the torque up substantially for some moments. The paddle shifters have a proper click, and this is definitely a far better shift experience. The paddle shifters in the E450 feel much more premium. They definitely have that. It's a solid piece of metal. A quick point about the steering. It is interesting to see that Mercedes has not given an AMG line steering for the E-Class, and this is a big omission in my opinion, and I believe they would eventually introduce that good looking steering what the E450 genuinely deserves. Now a quick point about the driving experience, the driver's seat. So adjusting the driver's seat, I personally feel that it is slightly difficult to get the best driver position in the Mercedes compared to the BMW. This is my personal opinion, and it may differ for someone else. Coming to the ride quality, let me switch back to comfort mode. We were in sport mode all the time. So the tires which I have been complaining about genuinely do perform thanks to the 55 profile and the smaller rim size, because this is an 18-inch setup versus the M340i, which now has 19s. So wow, I mean, I'm telling you, the Mercedes really is a great riding car, this. And the E450 manages and aces this department where BMW may not try to enter. The handling dynamics of this car are definitely not as good as the BMWs, but I would go on to say that this feels more stable than the BMW, particularly when you are driving and accelerating in a straight line. And that may come down to the long wheelbase version of it. And this is the MRA2 platform, which is the modular rear architecture 2, which we are aware about. It's a very flexible platform, and this platform is doing a good job in the Mercedes E-Class. So the CLE53 was also based on this MRA2 platform. And to be honest, when it comes to the handling, considering it's a long wheelbase version, it still is a very engaging car to drive, because in sport mode this does get a good feedback from the steering wheel, which you would want, and when you would want to take the wheel, and this is something which is absolutely, you cannot really complain about, considering the E450 as a package. Let's try that again, shall we? So definitely the M340i is properly giving consistent launches. For whatever reason, this definitely goes in the advantage of the M340i. So yes, this is the B58D version, and this is the non-hybridized version. So what else to compare? If you want to compare exhaust notes, there is absolutely no comparison, because I am running an M Performance upgrade. The exhaust sounds absolutely brilliant. But you know, this is something what the Mercedes can also replicate with a good bolt-on exhaust, and hence that is the reason I did not do any exhaust comparison for both the cars. Ideally the 5 Series should have been compared with the E-Class, but today in the Indian market it is very unfortunate to see, and I'm not really proud of BMW India to not give a 6-cylinder version of the current 5 Series, and that is the reason we are right now in the M340i comparing it with the E450, which is a 6-cylinder version of the Mercedes E-Class. So again, they cross paths because of the way they are priced, the M340i being cheaper, the E-Class being a segment above. But anyone, you know, looking for a performance sedan, they would definitely have both these cars considered in their mind. So what else to compare? The Merc uses the 9G-tronic gearbox, whereas this is using the ZF 8-speeder. And I'm not a big fan of DCTs. I am a genuine fan of the torque converters, because they are less jerky, and at the same time this ZF does a great job in doing the performance stuff as well as when you are cruising in comfort. Oh, it does mellow down, and the best is eco mode. You know, it's absolutely smooth. Another quick point which I wanted to make, which would be in favor of the E450, would be the turning radius. The M340i has a very bad turning radius. However, it's interesting to note that the E-Class, being an all-wheel drive, being a long wheelbase version, has a very decent turning radius compared to the M340i. So that is something which I noticed spending a few days with the E450 and comparing it with my M340i. It is very interesting to note that. So we should talk about the ride quality also, because again that goes into the favor of the E450. My car right now is having a tubeless setup, and you could see all these undulations. The car is very stiff because it is stiffly sprung. It is the M Performance suspension. This is the non-active, and a lot of people would be aware by now that the M340i LCI2 does have adaptive dampers, but I'm sure they cannot outperform the E450 the way it rides. So surely the E-Class gets a proper win for the ride quality. And the handling, again, E-Class does a pretty good job. I somewhere feel that the straight line performance of the E-Class, stability-wise, is very, very good. However, the steering response, the sharpness, the handling dynamics of the M340i are unparalleled. The interior experience is where the difference starts getting obvious, and the E450 really leaps ahead with this interior, the space, as well as the overall luxurious feel. This screen layout is the third generation of the MBUX platform, the software which Mercedes gives in their cars, and it is very good. This screen also operates, this also does, and it's a good experience. And in fact, in the entire Mercedes lineup, this is the most advanced screen. Recently we just did the G-Wagon, we did the CLE53. They also did not have this MBUX screen. When it comes to the music system, again, the E450 has a fantastic music system, and it genuinely distinguishes itself way above what the BMW has, which is the Harman Kardon 16 speaker system. The rear seat experience is absolutely unparalleled, and this is something which only BMW can dream of. Forget powered blinds, the M340i does not have any blinds at all. The legroom, knee room, as well as the comfort levels are top notch, and you really got to appreciate the cushion technology what Mercedes has developed. This is the pre-facelift version. That is the reason we are getting the iDrive 7 and not the entire big iDrive 8 screen. I personally prefer the iDrive 7, which is very fantastic. So I have some touch buttons also which I have pre-configured. Right now I just press 7, which showed me the tire pressure monitor. The music system though continues to be the 16 speaker Harman Kardon system, and that is common across the pre-facelift and the facelift versions. This is again in comparison to the E450 that takes the cake, and surely the E450 has the better music system. However, this cabin is more driver centric, I believe, and has always got that serious attention to it. And yes, it has a proper head-up display, which I genuinely love, and this is something which the Mercedes has somehow surprisingly just ignored in their E450. So the M340i has decent amount of space, much better than the F30, the previous generation 3 Series model. I would still reckon it's a no comparison, and that win goes to the E450, at least very clearly for the back seat. BMW had launched the M340i back in 2019 at the LA Auto Show, and it was introduced into India in 2021. So it's been a long time, and BMW has given the G20 this generation of the 3 Series not one but two facelifts in the form of the LCI1 and the LCI2, which I mentioned a couple of times in this video already. Whereas the Mercedes just completed a year of the E-Class, and the E450 is very much new into its generation. And there are very few things what the Mercedes can't match of the BMW, whereas the BMW has a couple of things which it cannot match of the Mercedes, particularly the space, interior, and the ride quality. In every other aspect, the E450 does similarly well what the M340i does. And because we are very close to a new generation of the 3 Series, and this will be renewed in the form of an M350. Right now, if you're in the market, if I would be in the market, I would definitely pick the E450 over the M340i. And on that conclusive thought, thank you for watching.